Well, hi there. So in this video, we're going to be doing two bank balance sheet problems, and they're kind of assessing, do you understand what happens when someone makes a deposit or withdraws money? Let's get started. Okay, so these are good models for the types of questions you're likely to see on an AP test. These balance sheet questions show up. They are short FRQs on the free response. So this is pretty close to what you're going to be seeing on an exam. First question, what's the reserve requirement? Now, a lot of students are saying that it's just this 10,000. It's not the amount in the required reserves. Instead, it's this ratio of the 10,000 over the 50,000. So 10,000 divided by 50,000 is 0.2, or we could say 20%, 2.2 or 20%. So it's not the amount. It's not saying 10,000, right? So not 10,000. That's not what the right answer is. Not the amount of the required reserves. It's the percentage. Assume that Epley withdraws 5,000 in cash from his checking account. How much would the total reserves change by? They would go down by $5,000. So when Epley withdraws the money, what's going to change is the total reserves, which were 15, right? Because that's these two combined, were 15. They're going to go down by 5 for a new total of 10. And on this side, this 50,000 is going to become 45,000, right? Because he's literally withdrawn the money. So 45,000. Now, the next part is going to be a little bit tricky. How much do the excess reserves change by? A lot of students are going to say 5,000 because they think it's just going to come right out of here, but that's not correct. We know that they have a total of 10,000, right? Total of 10,000. How much do they have to hold of that total in required reserves? Well, they have to hold 20%. And 20% is 9,000, right? 20% is 9,000. So that means this value is now $9,000, right? And again, that's because they have to be holding, of this $10,000, they have to keep 9 as required reserves. That means that they are left with $1,000 in excess reserves. And again, the total came down by 5, but they didn't just take it all out of excess. And the reason why is it's really not how they give out money. They just hand out the money and then they recalculate, how much do we have to keep as required reserves? They have to keep 9 and they have an extra 1,000. That means our answer to our question is by how much is a decrease of $4,000. Right? So it's a little bit of a tricky one, but it's a pretty tough one. Now, the initial effect on M1 is no change. It's still in M1. And let's take a look at this balance sheet at the bottom. What's the reserve requirement? Again, this one is 2,000 over 10,000. And that's still equal to 0.2. I promise that on tests, they have a bigger variety. I'm sorry that I gave you 2, 3, 4, and 5 in a row that are that way. Back on deposits, 5,000. What's the immediate effect on the M1 money supply? No change. Still in M1. Hopefully you're picking up that that's a common question. What's the immediate effect of the deposit on required reserves? Well, they have to keep 20%. So we would say 20% of 5 is increase $1,000. How much of that deposit could they lend out? 80%, so $4,000. And what's the maximum possible change in the money supply? Well, if the first loan is $4,000 times 1 over 0.2, which is 5, that's equal to $20,000. And what's one reason that it might not go up by that much? People hold cash and banks hold excess reserves. So there's 2 reasons here, hold excess reserves. And it's basically 2 things that would prevent the money supply from expanding as much as we would expect, right? So 2 reasons for you right there. So hopefully that helped you kind of understanding a little bit of how balance sheets would be affected when someone withdraws money or when they deposit it. I'll see you next time.